Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Invitation to a Conversation. I hope everyone had a beautiful week. It was a beautiful spring day out this past week in Georgia. My guest today is Courtney Lucas. Good morning, Miss Lucas. How you doing?
Good morning, everyone. I'm doing beautiful. Thank you. Doing good.
Good. Thank you for accepting my invitation to a conversation. I
Thank you.
think you have some wonderful things to offer to the our listening or viewing audience this morning.
Thank
Miss
you.
Lucas, Miss Lucas, I always ask everyone, where are you from?
I am from Brunswick, Georgia.
Hmm.
I'm from Brunswick, Georgia, and I currently reside in Brunswick, Georgia.
Okay. Now, we have two main high schools here. Which
hmm
one did you graduate from? The Pirates or the Terrors?
I graduated from Glenn Academy. I'm a Terra, class of 2005.
All right. All right. What was your first career choice?
My first career choice was banking. Yes, I went into
Banking.
banking. Yes, 7 years uh, at SunTrust Bank. I did 3 years, and then I did the other four at BB&T Bank.
Okay. And usually when my guests come on, I tell everybody what they do first, but I think yours is such a different transition from banking into what you do now. So that's why I'm saving that. And when did you decide to change your career?
So it was, like I said, that seventh year. I went into banking. I graduated high school, went into college at first, and I was a teen mom. So I got pregnant with my daughter in the 11th grade and tried to, after I graduated, go to college. And my mother was in banking. Um, and so after that first year of college, I ended up being independent on my own, moved out of my mom's house at the age of 19 and got my first apartment. And on my path to be self-sufficient, I ended up leaving school full time and going into banking. And while doing banking, I had started practicing doing my vision boards and just really trying to find my purpose and passion in ways that I can pursue those things and what I'm most passionate about. And in that process, I had already been journaling and writing. That's something I've been doing since the third grade. I spoke with a friend of mine. We had been friends since second grade about um, my dream, this vision, and the struggles I went through as a teen mom while in high school. And there were key people who helped me along my path and helped me to be resilient during that time that I feel that God sent my way. And I really wanted other youth to be able to have that who were having a hard time having that same experience of someone to be there for them, to uplift them, to empower them when it's easy for them to give up, when challenges and different things we find ourselves in these spaces, especially during those teen years of trying to find ourselves. You have the
Mhm.
negative influences, you have the positive influences, and sometimes when we find ourselves trying to maneuver through that, people who may have believed in you and was pushing so much for you, and we find ourselves in these circumstances, it can be disappointing. And so I strongly believe during those time periods, the youth don't need, even though the adults may be surrounding them, may be disappointed, it's really a time where they really need more support and to really know that someone is believing in them in order to really get them to push through and not give up.
Yes.
And so I wanted to give back and do that. And this friend of mine, I had shared this vision with her for a while and she knew it. So when she found out about this organization that allowed just that, you to be able to go into the school and help youth that are finding themselves in hard places or going through a tough time, to be able to be that person that's strategically placed there to help them overcome those hurdles so that they can have a good experience and graduate from high school. And I
Yes.
decided then to make that switch.
And so Miss Lucas is an author. She's the founder of Nurturing Excellence LLC. I love that title. We will get into that conversation. And she is also does a spoken word artist, and we will continue and she is a hostess for Finding Hope Support Group. So those are some of the subtitles that we're going to get into today. Um, you said in the third grade that you discovered poetry and art. What was that experience like that you born out of you that you figured that this is the way that you, something that you wanted to delve into?
Yeah, so I remember being in the third grade, and um, I experienced a lot of childhood trauma. And during the third grade, we had a teacher who ended up introducing us to, that's when Emily Dickinson came on the scene. And she had a poem that hope is a thing with feathers. And it's basically about, it's kind of like a bird, but just, I'm not going to go into the poem. You can Google it. But hope is a thing with feathers. And we did some art surrounding the poem. And I just remember being so inspired because it was so little bit of words, but also I connected with it. And
Mm,
that was powerful for me. And then she ended up also doing Langston Hughes. And
mhm,
that was like even more personal for me because as Emily Dickinson was European, Langston Hughes was a Black male. And
mhm,
so just leading up to that point in time for me, that was powerful. And so Langston Hughes, the poem that I loved a lot of his poems, I Too Am America and different things like that. But the poem that he had was The Broken Winged Bird. And so like finding the connection between Emily Dickinson's poem and then Langston Hughes poem. And so
mhm.
I just really love that the whole area of the Harlem Renaissance and all of that. It made even poetry even more personal for me. Um, and just to see like, the Black man writing as well. So yeah, that was that experience for me in third grade. We were also introduced to Anne Frank during that time period, or a little time after. I can't exactly remember when we started reading Anne Frank, but she inspired me, or her story inspired me to keep a journal and a diary. And so I've been writing in, a diary, or now I call it a journal, since that age, since the third grade. And I've kept all of my journals and diaries since that time period as well.
That sounds like a collection for a coffee table book then.
Yeah. Yes.
You said some of your authors, reading your bio, you said some of your authors, like you already said, Langston Hughes, Maya Angelou, Emily Dickinson, Rudyard Kipling, and you
Mhm.
were inspired by Anne Frank. Can you tell us what each one of those authors brings to you and how they still influence you?
Yes, so Langston Hughes, as I said, with him being a Black male and writing, I'm pretty sure, like growing up in the church, I've been introduced to other poets. But I guess the fact that it was the teacher had us focusing on poetry, like it really connected. He really connected with me during that time, being introduced and focused to that. So I love that. And then Emily Dickinson, just that poem in period was like the first poem I feel like that really spoke with me about that with Hope with Feathers. Maya Angelou, I just love the way she writes. I still I rise. I love
Mhm.
that poem. I will go back to that poem and read it during times that I feel down. And it just automatically just empowers me. You can just feel her spirit like still living on through her poetry and her words. And
Mhm.
also A Phenomenal Woman, like growing up and seeing that performed during some of our church services and things like that really gave me the freedom to just be a Black woman and take pride in that and just be phenomenal. She
Mhm.
speaks in that poem just about just kind of how others' perception is of you and how that can be projected onto you, but you still claiming that and knowing who you are and walking with it with your head up and proud. And I just love just her poetry because it helps me to embody that.
Yeah.
And then Rudyard Kipling, his poem "If." I really, really like that that poem. Of course, it seems like it's him talking to his son about being a man,
Mhm.
but it in terms of us thinking of like what a man is and defining that, he really like dives into how to lay out a map of what a man truly is and how he maneuvers through life.
Mhm. And
And so yeah.
and going back to Maya Angelou, um, Still I Rise has the same, almost the same similar sentiments throughout every generation as Dr. Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream, because
Hmm.
Still I Rise is one of those things that you say to yourself when you read when you're having a tough day and you want to
Yes.
have those self-pity parties. But
Hmm.
still, you can have those self-pity parties and be down, but you know you still got to rise and
Yes.
continue living and
Yes.
continue going on with your life.
Yes, I
Right.
think just as ancestors too, just letting us know that those who come before us, even in the hardships of the time periods that they were in, they still wrote, and that can live on, like their spirit lives on through their poetry. And if they can
Mhm.
still find that strength to sum it up and to persevere during those times, then so can we. And that's
That's
something
right.
that's a beautiful of poetry is able to be passed down,
It
throughout
is.
the period.
Hmm. And as you were saying before we got into your favorite authors, you were talking about your struggles as a teenager. And not all teenagers, but some teenagers go through their struggles, like you said, to find their identity, to find out what they're going to do after high school. And like I've always told my daughters and my grandchildren now is that don't go to children your age when you're a teenager and have situations. Go to somebody who's going to tell you what you need to hear and not what you want to hear. Because most likely, if you go to that person in your same age group, they're going to tell you something to make you feel good, to feel better, and whatever. May not be harmful to you at the time, but in the long run, you always need to have that adult that is in supportive of what your parents or your guardian is trying to teach you. You may not understand it, but you're going to come full circle to it one day.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. And you said you experienced some hardship. Would you like to explain some of the hardships that you went through to get you to where this full circle, where you are now, that you give back in the
Yes,
community?
yes. So there's 6 different forms of abuse, and there that we focus on in the parenting curriculum that I teach, but there's 6 different forms of abuse. There of course are more, especially as you go through life and even adulthood, but as children there's 6 primary ones that we focus on. And throughout that time period from birth until 18, I would experience each form of
Mm-hmm.
those abuses. um, and uh, the thing that I feel like experiencing early on, the domestic violence or witnessing the domestic violence with between my mom and my dad, and the sexual abuse caused me to really not be as verbal. It kind of it robs you of that childhood experience. So where my other cousins may be going out playing and having a good time, I was kind of more introverted, and really struggled to find my voice. And writing is one of the things that really became therapeutic for me in order to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that's how writing played a part in that for me. It didn't immediately come forth as poetry, just writing about how I felt and really my relationship with the Lord. And how it started out was me writing like "Dear God" letters, or "Dear
Mm-hmm.
Lord," whatever. Whenever I was having a hard time or really struggling, and so those are some of the experience that I endured.
Mm-hmm. So you now we all know about the mental abuse, the physical abuse, and the sexual abuse. Now you said they were 6. What are the 3 others that you did not mention?
Yeah, so yeah, there's physical, sexual, you have the psychological, or mental
Hmm.
abuse, and then you have the verbal and emotional abuse. And
Hmm.
then there's abandonment, and
Hmm.
that's just where the parent completely is not around. And
Mm.
then there is neglect.
Mm.
And some people will say, well, abandonment and neglect is the same thing, but it's not. What we found is that neglect is basically when a parent is present, but not really present.
They're
Present, but not
present.
fully present. Yeah.
They're present physically, but
Yes.
not mentally and emotionally and support wise.
Yes.
Hmm.
And so abandonment is when the parent is completely physically nor emotionally, mentally present at all. Yeah.
Hmm. Yes. Yes. Okay. And you said that writing, and when you found your voice, tell me about that time. What was that like? Because everybody finds their voice in different ways and in
Yes.
different, times and spaces in their life. So how was it? And when did you know that that was your voice that you had found?
Well, it's funny. I think you go through phases of it. So of course, when you're a child and you don't know Mary, you're more, kind of introverted. But then as you grow up and you're trying to find your voice, sometimes we find, I think that's the power of poetry and writing too. Our voices are similarity through others. And so that's why I think speaking up and speaking out is important, because someone who they have a voice, but they may not be in a point where they know their voice or how they want to use their voice. Seeing other people use their voice for good, or to know and share similar stories, empowers others to speak up and share their story and their voice as well. And so it took on many different forms through the teen years and the friends that you surround yourself with and different things like that. But for me, it was once I ended up, just writing, I think it fuels you finding your own voice, because you're able to separate your voice from the others' voices around you, or the voices that maybe, don't think I'm crazy when I say this, in your head, which can be developed from in childhood, when you may have the critics, or whatever those energies were around you, can be how those things replay in your thought processes. So really being able to debunk all of those things and find out how you feel, and having that awareness. And I think therapy helped me with that. But long before I even went through therapy, it was the writing and just me communing with the Most High that helped
Mm-hmm.
me to be able to find that within myself. And once I realized that, it really went to where it was like extreme, because once I was in therapy, you realized that when it comes down to trauma and grief symptoms are very much so alike. So
Yes.
when you are going through trauma, you're grieving whatever was lost, or grieving
Yes.
the experience, and really
Yes.
recognizing what the damage was done to you. And so then that next step, of not being in denial anymore, would be anger,
Mm-hmm.
and then, forgiveness, and going on through till you get to healing. So for me, I ended up going through this phase of being very angry and frustrated. And I realized during that time period that I kind of was really reckless with my mouth and with my voice at that point. Because it's like, oh, I got a voice and you're going to hear it. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to stand up for me. And so,
Yes.
like, I went through that process when it came down to finding my voice. So
Mm-hmm.
going from being extremely passive and not having a
Mm-hmm.
voice at all, to
Mm-hmm.
then, oh, I have a voice, and da da da
Mm-hmm.
da, to just saying, okay, that's unhealthy as well, and trying to find
Mm-hmm.
that middle ground,
Mm-hmm.
and being assertive, and with my voice and who I am. And that took a
Mm-hmm.
lot of work behind the scenes.
And that's an awesome revelation, because when you come from being an introvert, because you think nobody wants to hear what you have to say, or nobody is interested in what you're feeling or what you're going through mentally without saying it, and then something happens and you say, hey, I could say this. I could say it
Mhm.
more than one time. I could say it who I want to say it to. And
Yes.
this is coming from me. And you can't try to edit what I'm saying or correct what I'm saying, because this
Mhm.
is authentically coming from you. But discipline comes with all of that, because then
Mhm.
after you come down and you
Mhm.
found your voice and you found your true self, then you have to tell yourself, you can't always say what you want to say when you say it, because there's a time and place for everything. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And sometimes you have to stand there and take it because of where you are, or the environment, or the other people that you're around. And then
Yes.
you say, well, that's all right. I'll hold off, because
Yes.
I'll see him or her again. And then
Mhm.
I can better explain it one on one. It's
Yes.
absolutely.
Sometimes you may not know exactly how you feel or what your response is, or something may be triggering.
Mm-hmm.
And you just allow yourself to just hold space for yourself during that time. And then when you go
Mm-hmm.
back into your little corner, or
Mm-hmm.
your secret space, or whatever time with yourself, journal about it, and then really examine
Mm-hmm.
how you feel, or what is it that triggered me, and being able to give voice to those things if you do choose to share.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when you're in the midst of it, you get a loss for words.
Yeah.
And some other people around you might say, well, you're just going to stand there and take it, or sit there and take it. You're not going to say anything. But you have to let
Mhm.
that compute in your head,
Yeah. Yes.
you know, and then you have to, then you go and think about it. Then you say, oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
I understand. I understand. And now you said writing is therapeutic to you, right? So you say you still keep a journal. So do
Mhm.
you, when you go through a situation, the words, can it be like just a few words? Is it a sentence? Is it a phrase and you go jot it down? Do you continue with it, or is that it just for that time period? What is the process?
Yeah. So, in terms of poetry or just in terms of writing in general?
just in the terms of writing.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So it just starts out with sometimes just a feeling. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's me, my form of prayer,
Mm-hmm.
and me just writing out to God, like, okay, good morning, Father, or good morning, Lord. Or sometimes I even write to myself, good morning, Courtney, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Or girl. Someone sold a try, you know what I'm saying? Like, however, it
Right.
may show out in those ways. So sometimes it starts out as full sentences, me just being aware of those feelings and giving those feelings a place, honoring what I'm feeling,
Mm-hmm.
and then allowing Holy Spirit to be able to lead me through that. Like, this is what I'm feeling. And so I'll get those feelings out. And if I sit with it and allow myself to feel it, then whatever needs the processing of it comes through after that. And I'll write that
Mm-hmm.
out as I'm feeling that, or as I feel like Spirit is leading me to. And sometimes even within those writing, solution is given. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and then if it's just a word, then write that word. And sometimes for me, that will look like a full form of, like writing and lead to multiple sentences. Sometimes it's just writing whatever that word is. You know how you have a big circle and then different
Right.
lines coming out from it.
Right.
Like I guess some form of a graph, and then just flowing from there.
Mm-hmm. 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 I had lost the question, so I'm looking. Pardon me
Okay.
for looking down. I lost the questions.
And then
Mm.
sometimes I'll keep continuing until you find the question. Sometimes too, it's whenever you may hear someone else say something. I think people do it already when they're in church and the pastor's preaching. You're taking notes, or somebody says a quote like you mentioned, and then you can write it down and then expand from there off of what someone else may have said. Like, who, why did I resonate with that? And going and diving deeper
Right.
into that. Mhm.
Right. And so I had a thought while I was looking for them questions, but I'll continue on. And so um when you so explain, so your name is Courtney Lucas, but
Yes.
you're AKA C-Luv. How did
Yes.
C-Luv come about?
Okay, it's a funny story. So my mom is V-Love, and she's been called that since her teenage years, I think. My dad, I think, started calling her that. I'm not sure. And so when I was a teenager, I started dating this guy, my senior year, and he would always joke with my mom, like, "Hey, V-Love," or whatever. And then he started calling me C-Love. And then other
Oh,
people started calling me C-Love, and that's how I got
okay.
the name C-Love. It was kind of a copycat from my mom being V-Love. Mhm.
Okay. I thank you. I found the questions and we were right
Yes.
in order with them.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Um do you ever have a you know how they say you have a writer's block or something like that? When you
Mhm.
have a feeling, do you ever get a loss of words of how you want to interpret it in writing?
Yes.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yes. And I
And
don't
what do
like
you and what
that.
and what do you do in times when that happens? I'm sure it doesn't happen all often.
I try to figure out what it is and get into the root of it.
Mm-hmm.
Am I numbing? Why is there a disconnect? And
Mm-hmm.
try to sit with that. And so it'll either some from that point, I lean into the other voices that
Mm-hmm.
are influenced and that I resonate with, and that helps me.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be music that
Mm-hmm.
I'll listen to, or other people that I may follow on YouTube, or other ministers. Like, I really love Sarah Jakes Roberts and things like that, to just help me to be able to figure out why am I hitting a blockage, but or a block or a wall, to be able to
Mm-hmm.
go deeper. And of course, prayer. And I would make it similar to that. Like, if there's ever a time where someone feels like they're praying and it feels like your prayer is hitting the ceiling, or what's going on with that, type thing. And when it comes down to writing, and there's writer's block. And so I definitely don't like that feeling. But to me, it's more so of like, diving deeper. I also find that sometimes it can be hormonal with us as women. I can't speak to that with men, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it can be, pay attention to the timing of your cycle and where you are in that phase. And sometimes women can feel flat based on, hormones, and being able to
Mm-hmm.
jot that and what's going on with your body.
Them hormones, I tell you,
Yes.
it's everything. You said that one of your favorite expression is expression over suppression. Can you
Yes.
explain?
Yes. So there is, I know it's kind of cliche now, but there's a book called and a saying called "The Body Keeps the Score." And pretty much whenever we're going through things, if we continue to suppress it, and we're thinking it's going away, or like I said, when I talked about the stages of grief and processing trauma, that first step is denial. And I equate that so much to like suppressing and not allowing yourself to process and deal with it. Life is happening. Life is going to keep compounding and happening. The
Mhm.
best gift that we can give to ourselves is finding a way to express it. And for me,
Mhm.
that way is writing, singing, but some people it's dancing, art, whatever that thing may be that is, yours. Some people it's just working out, but that like working out, it does really, benefit in many ways. But and then somatic healing, but also you want to be able to learn, be in touch with your emotional body and your spiritual body and be able to
Mhm.
express that way. Studies have shown there's a test called ACEs, which is a survey of I'm sorry, let me calm down. A survey of adverse childhood experiences. And the
Okay.
study over time reveals that the different forms or different things of adverse childhood experiences or trauma that we have, and if you don't do some work around it, or to clear it,
Mhm.
then there is a strong scientific connection to health, like a lack of like not good health outcomes is what I'll say.
Mhm.
So like
Mhm.
diabetes, stroke, heart
Mhm.
disease, even the rate for that is suicide is like, so I'm not, I don't want to quote anything wrong, but it's like extreme
Mhm.
difference from people who have had adverse childhood experiences but are suppressing it,
Mhm.
because the body holds those traumas, it holds those stresses, it holds those things. So we think that we're just moving on and not dealing with it, but it really is coming out in other ways. And sometimes that is physically, sometimes it's on the people that we love and are trying to love us and be there, close into us, and we may come out in anger and frustration.
Mhm.
But there's good ways to be able to process and deal with it. So that's what I mean when I say expression over suppression.
Yeah, you have to find an outlet
Mm-hmm.
in order to, like you said, to relieve what you're feeling. And like
Yeah.
you said, a lot of um artists, they put it in their music. They sing
Mm-hmm.
about it.
Mm-hmm.
This is 50 years of hip hop, and they say that through their music, they were expressing their culture, how they were living in their communities.
Yep.
That started with Tupac. It started way before Tupac, but it became into our music and everything. Some people draw. Some people, like you say, exercise. So everybody has to find their way of
Mm-hmm.
bringing those things out into you. And one of the things I found out is, when you're a little child, some of your parents told you, swallow that, you know, stop crying, stop doing that.
Yes.
So you're suppressing all of those inner feelings, because when we were coming up, if you had something to say, you weren't allowed to say it,
Mm-hmm.
so you weren't heard. You know what I'm saying? So you just
Right.
walked around, and until you got to that place where you can say, oh, I'm tired of this. Or people look at your face expression and say, you always looking mean. Why you looking mean? Well,
Mm-hmm.
do you really want to hear what I have to say?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So suppressing your feelings is something that we have to come out of and deal with what we are, because I found out that speaking about the issues will make me more comfortable in overcoming it. So then the more you talk about it, then you won't bring the tears, you won't bring the
Mm-hmm.
anger, you be comfortable in it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, moving along. And so you said you're the founder of Nurturing Excellence. I love that title.
Thank
How did it come about? Why did you think you needed to do this? And what do you offer underneath this organization?
Yeah. So when I was working, when I told you I left banking and went into the career, I started at an elementary school, and my role was a parent outreach resource manager. And we ended up like surveying the parents to figure out what the greatest need was. And the parents end up verbalizing that they needed parenting skills, parenting
Mm.
classes. They needed like help with that. And so went and got the training for parenting. But once I ended up being promoted to the high school level, uh, that I was no longer able to, that was a different role. So I was no longer able to teach the parenting classes. And I would see different parents in the community who would just be like, hey, we need this. Like, I know so many other people who need it. Like, when are you going to do it? And I'm like, in this new role, I can't do it type thing. And so, I mean, like 4 years later, I ended up it kept, as I'm writing, my passions and things, it kept coming up. And so I ended up branching out on my own and creating Nurturing Excellence with the parenting thing. But at the same time, I was raising my own, I have 3 children, so raising my own kids and finding my voice, writing my poetry and getting ready to publish my book and different things at that time. And also dealing with my childhood traumas. So I ended up finding this is now called Sapria, but during the time period, it was Finding Hope. And they have like a retreat that you can go to for survivors of childhood sexual abuse. And I went to the retreat. It was in Utah. And once we're at the retreat, and it's so good, I can go into that a little later, but it's surrounded by therapists and like you have your own personal chef and all kind of things like that. And they really cater to educate survivors of childhood sexual abuse from birth to the age of 18. And it's a powerful experience. Well, part of that is being able for anyone who's interested to go back to your community and provide a support group for other survivors in your area. And I decided I wanted to sign up to do that, so I went through the training and everything. And so I also had that I wanted to branch out and do as well. So that is how Nurturing Excellence was created and formed. And then the name Nurturing was derived from Nurturing Parenting, which is the curriculum that I use. I love the word nurturing. And then the excellence part was just derived from us being a people and Black excellence. And I
Mm.
love that title of Black excellence. And so I did struggle, I'll be honest, for a little bit with that, the excellence part, because I'm like, well, my path wasn't excellent. So I was just sitting here thinking of like perfection. I was like
Mhm.
mixing up the two with perfection and then excellence, and just, hyper criticizing myself about that. And then it was just like I really dived into the word like excellence and Black
Mhm.
excellence, and and I just decided like, no, that's right, nurturing excellence, striving and nurturing our youth, and then ourselves, not even just the youth, but even the inner child, reparenting those parts of ourselves that may have experienced trauma, whether it's sexual abuse or physical abuse or those different things. Also nurturing them in the stage of you're already born in excellence. You are that, but refining, redefining what that is for you and cultivating in that intentionally for our children. So helping parents to be able to do that intentionally, but then also for ourselves that need that healing as well.
And that's how I see it, nurturing excellence. We are all brought into this world excellent people, children of God,
Yes.
but you
Yes.
have to nurture it in order to keep it excellent. So we might
Yes.
stray, but we're
Yeah.
still excellent. We still have to go back and find that excellence in us. And that's the other side of it. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Um, and you said your passion is for youth, family, and parenting. And
Mhm.
so it might be sounding like we're going over the same thing, but
Yeah.
why did you choose family, youth, and parenting as your passion?
um, so being a young mother myself, and then going through those stages with my own 3 children, and also my childhood, and then having to grow and nurture Courtney and go back to those different stages of myself in the midst of all of that.
Mhm.
It can be triggering, especially when your children are going through the ages that you may have been, experiencing those forms of abuse,
Mhm.
or if you're going through where you may not be with one of the parents. And so that
Mhm.
may trigger neglect or abandonment within you, or trying to parent differently than what was modeled to you and
Mhm.
improve those ways. And also wanting to parent from a place of love and not from a place of fear or guilt or just parenting period by default. So just that is what I'm passionate about, being able to, for so many years working directly with the youth and seeing a lot of those themes reoccurring, from having an incarcerated father or an absent father or an absent mother, or dealing with the different forms of abuse that they've experienced, and just being able to resonate so much with those students, and then trying to figure out ways as that one-on-one caring adult to help empower them to push through. And then also, I started being passionate about the parents. Like, it's enough for us trying to be there as well for the children in those environments. But like, I'm my mother's first daughter, the oldest. And so, if things aren't corrected, things continue to cycle and pass down generationally. So then I started being very passionate about, what am I doing and what is my purpose for my family or my bloodline's timeline while I'm here, to be able to shift that trajectory. I don't want to be in a place of like pity or casting blame or fault. And I also feel like in this time that we're in right now, we have so much more than what our ancestors, our parents had. Educational wise, like the awareness emotionally and all those different things, and even the terminology and the language. So it does not serve any of us to be coming from a place of like anger and you or whatever like that. And so being able to not only heal but also educate myself and raise awareness and be able to give that to others, but also within my own bloodline and within my family, to be able to close out some of those cycles and correct some of those things. And even with my mom, being able to do that work alongside with her, and have those conversations with my dad, and just really be able to move on beyond that.
Break those generational curses and find a way of communicating and getting past it. But one thing that some people aren't ready to do is to go back and discuss that issue, to bring them forward to the present time. And people live into their 40s, 50s, and 60s not delving into what broke that relationship. They rather just go on with their life. And I always say there's two kinds of people. You got the victim, or you got the survivor, or Miss Williams says the overcomer. Because if you're a survivor, Miss Valerie Williams said, you're just living day to day and you haven't gotten over it. But if you're an overcomer, you are past it. You're smiling. You're doing the work. And that's why I've always asked people when they come on my show, what caused you to, why did you choose this career choice? And 90% of the time, it's something that inspired them, the lack of, or the abundance of whatever it was growing up in their family, in their environment, or in their community. And I love it. And you are also an author, and your first book is called Politically Preserved. Why that title? Give us a synopsis of the book.
Yes. So Poetically Preserved is it's a collection of poems. I want to say over like a 10-year span, that of me just therapeutically processing and journaling and just coming up with different poems and writing it out. And I would share some of the stuff on Facebook, and then people would say, "Oh, write some more," or inbox me and say, "If you have anything that you write, I really enjoy your writing. Please send it to me," type thing like that. And then Miss Valerie Williams, who you just spoke about, she has all the different books. So she's like, "Courtney, it's easy. Like, just write a book," those type things like that. And so I'm like, okay. So I sat down, I got the collection of poems together, trying to pick and choose what I'm going to put in there. I ended up, God had already given me like 3 years before I published it, the title of the book and the vision for it, which of the cover, which is the rose. I really love roses, but the rose that grew from concrete. That poem of Nikki Giovanni. And then of course, with my age, I first discovered it through Tupac. But just that visual, and then this image of me in this white dress which was my grandparents lived in Miami as I was growing up, which was taken one Easter Sunday when I was there, which represents that purity and innocence. And
Mm-hmm.
so the title Poetically Preserved came from just that, just the poems of preserving me
Mm. Okay.
through all of
And
those times, through all those adversities.
okay. And
Yeah.
so you're also a spoken word artist. Can you give us, you came on this show today, so I hope you prepared something for coming on this show today. Can you give us a spoken word?
Yes. Now I will say that I have not memorized. I haven't gotten to that point, my poem, all my poems yet. But
Okay.
so I will be reading this from the book. And this poem has come out. Once again, I find myself in this place, shadowed by disgrace. I've lost so much time in this masquerade, trying to reveal her face. We keep playing hide and seek as she withholds the depth of her true beauty from me. But guess what? I've already had a peek of the
Mm,
fullness behind that facade. And although I have seen you naked and ashamed before God, His Spirit allows me to see the true you before the impurities and contaminations, a vision that surpasses all condemnation. Please come out for a real conversation. Baby,
mm,
you don't have to stay in this dark damnation. Who has convinced you that you must keep company with the worst parts of your past? This
mm,
game could be over. Can we make this our last? Aren't you tired of being tickled by self defeat? Stand in your strengths. Don't bow to playing weak. Make yourself known and say what you need to say. For there is a love that awaits to bring you out of the darkness into a new day. I'm here to tell you that you, my dear, hold His very sunshine. You know how I know this? Because you are mine. I love you.
Woo!
Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. Here you go. The two snaps there. Awesome. 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 And so when you're taking your daily walk through life, I like to call them journeys through life, and a word resonates in you, do you have to, can you remember it, or do you take your phone and put it in your notepad, or do you always carry a pad and pencil so you can jot it down? How does that work?
I always carry a pad and pencil so I can jot it down. But I also, there are times that I have to go to my notes. So, especially like if I'm in meetings or in a space where I can't pull out a pad and pencil, I'll go to my notes and put it there. Or if I'm in the car, just press a little, try to speak it into the thing so it can kind of write it out for me.
Mm. What's next for Miss Lucas?
Okay. So, currently, I am teaching parenting classes at our local for Glenn County YMCA on Tuesdays, 10:30 session, a 12 o'clock session, and then a 6 p.m. session for our working parents. And then in McIntosh County, I do the same on Thursdays at their
Mm,
YMCA. I am definitely wanting to look into creating a podcast of my own for poets to be able to share their
mm,
poetry, fellow poets, and just have a space, create a space to be able to honor poetry and for people to be able to share, as you've given me this opportunity, the inspiration for their poems and to just get to
mm,
know who's behind and the story behind the poet.
mm,
And so, yes, that would be called Poetic Alchemy and
mm,
creating the Poet's Corner. I think that, when it comes down to alchemy, that's what poetry, if we're intentional about it, allows us to be able to do. And then uh, I am looking at a part of an organization called Hope at Hand. And this is in
mhm,
Jacksonville, Florida. And it's
mhm,
a lot of different poets and artists that delegate their time to become trained facilitators to be able to go out into their communities with youth or people who are recovering from substance abuse or into the prisons and into the youth detention centers or abused women and things like that to be able to teach them um, processes of art and poetry that will help them to heal or discover themselves in their voice. And so we are looking into being able to bring that service through myself, for me with Nurturing Excellence, partner with Hope at Hand to Glenn County and be able to
Hmm.
provide those.
I have a place for you. I'll let you know after this show where we can
Yes,
use.
thank you. And then,
Yes.
of course, we are April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month as well as Child Abuse Prevention Month, and
Mhm.
so we are gearing up to do our spring/summer, because it's a 9 weeks thing of sessions for the Finding Hope Support Group, and we'll meet
Mhm.
on Sundays at 6 p.m. So if anyone is interested in joining that, I'll be starting advertising that in.
Okay. Okay. Who inspires you?
Oh, my mother inspires me. My
Mm,
grandmothers inspire me. I want to be able to come in as a caveat and say that it's often parallel duality. So when we may go through things, and I feel like when it comes down to the Black family and just from slavery on up to now, and just the systemic things that we have dealt with in oppression, every family on that spectrum within us as a race has just dealt with PTSD from that. But different families, economically, financially, are emotionally, whatever, are different aspects of
mhm,
that in that process of evolving and finding themselves. And I want to say that
mhm.
as much as we may have dealt with different things within our family dynamics, there's also, we must pause to honor the spirit of survival, and us being here and being and them doing the best that they can and the things that they have instilled in us.
Yes.
Even as myself as a mother, I may not get everything right, but I'm intentional with healing and trying to do the best that I can for my children. And so I always want to honor the mothers, even the fathers that have come before me and doing the best that they can do. And it is my duty, while I have them here and even going forward, to be able to carry the torch and pass that on to the generations that are present and that are coming after me. So I want to say and give honor to them
Yeah.
first
And
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 foremost.
and you hit something that should have a whole another conversation to itself.
Mhm,
Um, you talk about slavery. Just
mhm,
imagine the women and men and their children that were born into slavery. That was
mhm.
born into trauma. I mean,
Yes,
that's trauma. you know,
yes.
that's um that's trauma.
And
Generational,
scientifically, they're showing now that how those things carry down, even I forget the
generations,
word, but generationally and genetically, some of
generational.
the things are physical, but those things are also spiritual, emotional, mental, some of those things. So,
Oh,
yeah.
I must say we're out of slavery physically, but
Hmm.
sometimes we are still in slavery mentally,
Yes,
because we're so
yes.
used to being told what to do, how to do it, what we can and we can't have. And so we deal with that our own selves. We sometimes we cause trauma to ourselves because
Hmm.
we are so fixed into it that we are limited, but we're not limited. Like you said, we have to find our voice and break
Yes,
out of it and come forward.
yes,
And this is
yes,
where we're here now. And it's so
yes.
inspiring.
Thank
It's
you.
just an explosion of African Americans doing a lot of things coming together. Um, yeah, that's a whole nother conversation. Um, what is your favorite scripture, phrase, or testimony that keeps you grounded?
I will say that my favorite scripture is just it's a whole thing, but it's Psalms 91. I really
Hmm.
love Psalms 91. And whenever I find myself disheartened or discouraged, or feeling like, okay, Lord, where are you? I know you're present. And so just going back to that, and it really grounds me. Yeah, it
Yes.
reminds me of who I am. And
And
of course, Isaiah 54. But yeah,
mhm.
those two work in tandem for me. And then Psalms 1, I think that is good too, because it's speaking about the difference. And even though it may look like this, it is not that. And eventually, the one who is firmly rooted, will flourish, and everything else, even though it may appear this way in this world, will soon pass away. And so I think those scriptures, and then also Sarah Jakes Roberts, she really inspires me a lot with her transparency and just how authentic she is. In the
Mm-hmm.
time that I feel like I found her in like her first book, it really helped give me that boost in sharing my story and writing, my putting my book out there. I held it for like 3 years, like I said, because I did not want my family, my mother. I was so afraid of me putting myself out there and my story and the stuff in my poetry, um, like making them look or feel bad or any type of guilt on them through the work that I was doing. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm grateful for it, and it has just done nothing but cleared the way and opened up the path for more of that healing to be able to spread and deepen.
And for those who are listening or viewing this conversation, I want to read Psalms 91 because I use it when you're feeling alone or that nobody is there, you
Mhm.
know, that you can talk to. And he says, whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Surely he will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his feathers. And this is my favorite part. He will
Mhm.
cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. You just
Mhm.
feel that when I say that part, you just feel that comfort that he's
Yes.
embracing you with those
Yes.
big white wings that's so wide,
Yes.
embracing you just like a
Yes.
soft pillow. His faithfulness will be your shield and your rampart. You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. A
Mhm.
thousand may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you.
Mhm.
You will only observe with your eyes and see the punishment of the wicked. I
Mhm.
tell I love that Psalms 91.
Mhm.
Psalms 23 and Psalms 91 is my
Yes.
favorite. Yes. And so, Miss Lucas, to um, before we end this conversation, for those who are listening or watching this conversation, for those who have gone through some type of trauma, whether childhood, adult trauma, who has not found their voice yet or their true self, give them some wisdom to close out
Yes.
the conversation.
I want to first of all say that you matter, your story matters, your life matters, and your voice matters. In order to be able to speak up, though, you have to be able to know that you matter. One of the number one things that, when it came down to me, was not believing that and not feeling that sense of worth within myself. So I would say that everything points back to your creator, to the Most High. And even if you don't have enough strength or belief within yourself or that worth to be able to look to Him and go back to the Father, go back to your creator and seek His face. Go back to the Bible and read who He says you are and the promises that are within that, and believe and trust and put faith in that, and know that He is bigger and better and He has a purpose and a plan for you for such a time as this. And really seek to figure out what that is and allow His Holy Spirit just pull away from everything and everyone and really just allow His Holy Spirit to commune with you and to speak with you. And however that may be, whether it is, through worship, or when it comes down to writing or whatever that, or just the silence and the stillness. Sometimes it's just getting still and allowing that to be able to take place. And also know that you're not alone. And be intentional, like Miss Bailey said, about seeking out. We talked about it for youth, being able to be intentional about seeking out people, aside from their peers, to inspire you or to lead you and guide you. Adults need that as well. I think that the village is so very important in not just childhood, but also in adulthood. So being able to identify what your village looks like, what it should look like, maybe versus what it isn't looking like, or who
Mhm.
needs to be in that village, who doesn't need to be in that village,
Mhm.
and being able to have the courage to be able to seek out those people and know that there are people who will show up, especially when you're praying to the Most High for that. He will send people in your life in those moments to get you through. You got to believe and love in yourself enough, though, to allow those people in to be able to do that. Um, and yeah, I think that would be about it. Don't be afraid to go to therapy and to seek out that
Mhm.
help and support. And if you need to talk to me, I'm here.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And now we did not say this before we go. How can people find you through Nurturing Excellence LLC? Do you have a time, a place, a telephone number where they can contact you?
Yes. So my telephone number is 912-222-9713. And then the website is nurturingexcellence.org. I mean, nurture, not nurturing, nurtureexcellence.org. Nurturing excellence was, yeah, already in use, but nurtureexcellence.org.
But that's it, folks. Thank you for tuning in to Invitation to a Conversation. And I'll see you next month for our Mother's Day conversation. Thank you and continue to have a blessed weekend. Peace out. Oh, one more thing. And I
Yes.
would like to give a shout out to my grandson. Happy birthday, Jaquan. I love you. Bye bye.
Happy birthday.